She worked 14 hours a day in his restaurant. No contract, no days off, no one in her corner. When her body started to give out, the billionaire called it attitude. Then one night, after weeks of relentless exploitation, he appeared outside her crumbling apartment at midnight. No assistant, no bodyguard, no shield of power. What could possibly force a man who spent his entire life giving orders to bow his head and knock on the door of a nameless black waitress? The fluorescent lights of Hale and Legacy flickered above Naomi Brooks as she balanced 3 plates of filet mignon on her forearm. Her feet had gone numb hours ago, but she kept moving. That was the trick. Never stop moving. Never let anyone see you falter. It was nearly 1 in the morning when she finally clocked out. The manager, Derek, didn't even look up from his clipboard as she passed. 14 hours, no overtime pay, no acknowledgement. Just another day in the flagship restaurant of Victor Hale's empire. The subway ride home took 45 minutes. Naomi sat in the corner seat, her reflection staring back at her from the dark window, a 28-year-old woman who looked 10 years older. When she finally climbed the stairs to her 5th-floor apartment, her legs screamed in protest. The apartment was small, barely 600 square feet of peeling wallpaper and creaky floors. But it was home. Medical bills covered the kitchen table like a paper avalanche. Her mother's chemotherapy, the specialist consultations, the medications that insurance refused to cover. Naomi didn't count them anymore. She knew the total by heart. $63,000 and climbing. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, her younger brother. Got partial scholarship approved. Just need to make it through 1 more semester. You're my hero, sis. Naomi smiled despite her exhaustion. Marcus was 19, a first-year law student with dreams bigger than their circumstances. He was the reason she worked doubles. He was the reason she swallowed her pride every time Derek barked orders at her. He was going to be somebody. She looked at the family photo on the wall, herself, Marcus, and their mother Ruth, taken at his high school graduation. Ruth's smile was radiant, untouched by the cancer that would later invade her body. That was only 2 years ago. It felt like a lifetime. The next morning came too quickly. Naomi arrived at Hale and Legacy by 10, her body running on 4 hours of sleep and black coffee. The restaurant was a monument to excess. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and tables that cost more than her monthly rent. The kind of place where Wall Street executives dropped $500 on lunch without blinking. In the kitchen, Delia Monroe was already barking orders at the prep cooks. Delia was the sous chef, a 45-year-old black woman who had worked at Hale and Legacy for 12 years. She had a face that had seen too much and hands that never stopped moving. When she spotted Naomi walking past, Delia's expression softened with something like concern. "Girl, you look like death warmed over," Delia said, pulling Naomi aside. "How many hours you work yesterday?" 14, Delia shook her head. "You remind me of your mama back in the day. Same stubborn look. Same belief that suffering is the only way through." Naomi knew Delia and her mother had been friends decades ago, before life scattered them in different directions. Ruth had been a housekeeper. Delia had climbed her way up from dishwasher to sous chef. Different paths, same exhaustion. "I'm fine," Naomi said. "No, you're not." Delia glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "I've seen what this place does to people. It chews them up and spits them out. 12 years I've been here, and I've watched it happen over and over." Before Naomi could respond, the kitchen doors swung open. The air shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the sizzling pans seemed to quiet. Victor Hale had arrived. He walked through the kitchen like he owned not just the building, but the air inside it. 52 years old, silver-haired, with a jawline that belonged on a magazine cover and eyes that could freeze water. His suit probably cost more than Naomi made in 6 months. Behind him trailed 2 assistants clutching tablets, ready to record his every command. Victor inspected the stations without speaking. He ran a finger along a countertop, checked it for dust. He examined a plate arrangement with the intensity of a surgeon reviewing X-rays. No one breathed. Then he walked past Naomi. For a fraction of a second, his gaze caught hers. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or something she couldn't name. Then it was gone. He kept walking, and the kitchen slowly returned to life. "VIP dinner tonight," Derek announced after Victor left. "Senator Morrison and 12 guests. Mr. Hale wants everything perfect." Naomi's heart sank. VIP dinners meant extended hours. Extended hours meant less sleep. Less sleep meant more mistakes. More mistakes meant more reasons for Derek to threaten her job. Near the back entrance, Naomi collided with a young woman carrying a laptop. Papers scattered across the floor. "I'm so sorry," Naomi said, bending to help gather them. The woman looked up. She was maybe 24, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to catalog everything they saw. Her ID badge read, "IT Department." "It's fine." The woman collected her papers quickly, efficiently. Then she looked at Naomi, really looked at her, and something strange crossed her face. Not pity, something harder. "Be careful," she said quietly. "This place isn't safe for people like us." Before Naomi could ask what she meant, the woman was gone, disappearing down a service corridor like a ghost. That afternoon, Derek called Naomi into his office. The room smelled of stale coffee and ambition. "Congratulations," he said, though his tone suggested anything but. "Mr. Hale has personally selected you to serve at his private dinners." Naomi blinked. "Private dinners? Exclusive events, high-profile guests, the kind of people who could buy this restaurant as a birthday gift." Derek leaned forward. "This is an opportunity, Naomi. Mr. Hale rarely notices anyone. Don't make me regret recommending you." She wanted to ask about compensation, about hours, about what private dinners actually meant. But she saw the look in Derek's eyes, the warning beneath the congratulations, and she understood. This wasn't a request. "Thank you," she said. The words tasted like ash. The first private dinner was held in a penthouse suite above the restaurant. Naomi worked from 6 in the evening until 2 in the morning, serving wine to men who didn't acknowledge her existence and women who looked through her like glass. Victor sat at the head of the table, observing everything. At one point, Naomi's exhausted hands trembled as she poured champagne. A drop splashed onto the white tablecloth. The table went silent. Victor looked at the stain, then at her. His expression revealed nothing. No anger, no understanding, just cold assessment. "My staff is trained to be flawless," he said to the guest beside him, never breaking eye contact with Naomi. "When they fail, it's a reflection of character, not circumstance." Naomi's cheeks burned. She mumbled an apology and retreated to the shadows. Later, as she cleaned up alone, she caught her reflection in a silver tray. She barely recognized herself. On her day off, her first in 3 weeks, Naomi took the train to Brooklyn Memorial Hospital. The oncology ward smelled of antiseptic and quiet desperation. Ruth Brooks lay in bed, thinner than Naomi remembered. The cancer was stage 3 now, spreading despite the treatments that were draining both her body and her daughter's bank account. "Baby girl," Ruth said, her voice papery but warm. "You look exhausted. That job working you too hard?" "It's fine, Mama." Naomi sat beside her, taking her mother's frail hand. "How are you feeling?" "Don't change the subject." Ruth's eyes, still sharp despite everything, studied her daughter's face. "I know that look. I wore it for 30 years. Mama, listen to me." Ruth squeezed her hand with surprising strength. "I spent my whole life thinking endurance was love, that suffering in silence was strength, but all I did was break myself down piece by piece." Her eyes glistened. "Don't be like me, Naomi. Don't let them take everything from you." Naomi wanted to argue, wanted to say she was fine, that she could handle it, that the sacrifice was worth it. But the words wouldn't come. In the hallway, Marcus was waiting. He had grown tall, almost 6'2" now, with their father's broad shoulders and their mother's fierce eyes. "I heard what Mom said," he admitted. "You were eavesdropping?" "I was worried." He fell into step beside her as they walked toward the exit. "Naomi, I know about the extra shifts, the private dinners. They're exploiting you. Keep your voice down." "Why? Someone needs to say it." Marcus grabbed her arm, stopping her. "I can drop out, get a job, help with the bills." "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. "You're finishing school. You're becoming a lawyer. You're getting out of this cycle." "What about you?" Naomi didn't answer. She didn't have an answer. "I hate this," Marcus said quietly. "I hate that my education is killing you. I hate being a burden." Naomi pulled him into a hug. He was taller than her now, but in that moment, he was still her baby brother, still the kid she had helped raise when their father walked out. "You're not a burden," she whispered. "You're my reason." 3 weeks into the private dinner arrangement, Naomi was running on fumes. She had lost 8 pounds. Her hands shook constantly. Dark circles had become permanent residents beneath her eyes. Delia cornered her in the walk-in freezer one evening. "I need to tell you something," Delia said, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. 12 years ago, I was exactly where you are. Young, determined, convinced that if I just worked hard enough, everything would be okay." She looked away. "I lost my husband because I was never home. Lost my son because I didn't have time to be his mother. By the time I realized what I'd given up, it was too late." "Then why are you still here?" Naomi asked. Delia's laugh was hollow. "Because I have nothing left to lose. But you do." She grabbed Naomi's shoulders. "Get out while you still can, before this place takes everything." "I can't," Naomi said. "My mother's treatments, Marcus's tuition. If I lose this job, then you'll find another one. Not one that pays like this. Not one that lets me—" Her voice cracked. "I don't have a choice, Delia. I never had a choice." Delia's hands dropped. In her eyes, Naomi saw resignation. The kind that came from watching history repeat itself and knowing you couldn't stop it. "Then God help you," Delia said, "because this place won't." That night, alone in her apartment, Naomi stared at the ceiling and considered her options. She could quit, walk away, protect what remained of her health and dignity. But then the bills would pile up, the creditors would call, her mother's treatments would stop. Marcus would have to drop out. Everything she had sacrificed would mean nothing. Or she could stay, keep her head down, endure. Wasn't that what survival meant? Wasn't that what her mother had done, what Delia had done, what generations of black women had done before her? She chose silence. But as she lay in the darkness, she felt something new taking root in her chest. It wasn't acceptance. It wasn't peace. It was rage. Week 5 broke Naomi Brooks. It happened during the lunch rush, in the middle of the kitchen chaos. One moment she was carrying a tray of appetizers. The next, the world tilted sideways, and she was falling. The tray crashed against the tile floor. Shrimp scattered like frightened insects. Naomi's body crumpled beside them, her vision swimming with black spots and distant voices. "Naomi!" Delia was there first, cradling her head, shouting for someone to call for help. "Get her some water! Give her space!" The kitchen staff gathered around, a circle of concerned faces and whispered speculation. Naomi tried to speak, to say she was fine, but her lips wouldn't cooperate. Then Derek pushed through the crowd. What the hell is going on? His face was red, not with concern, but with fury. We have a full house out there. Senator Morrison's wife is waiting for her appetizers. She collapsed, Delia snapped. She needs medical attention. What she needs is to get up and do her job. Derek looked down at Naomi with undisguised contempt. This is completely unprofessional. Do you have any idea how this looks? Naomi managed to sit up, her head pounding. I'm sorry. I just need a minute. A minute? Derek laughed bitterly. You've had 5 weeks of minutes. 5 weeks of special treatment because Mr. Hale chose you for private events. And this is how you repay that opportunity. Delia stepped between them. She's been working 14-hour shifts for weeks. She's exhausted. She's human. She's replaceable. Derek's voice was cold. Get her out of my kitchen. I'll deal with this later. The incident report landed on Victor Hale's desk that evening. He read it while sipping scotch in his corner office, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind him like a constellation of money and ambition. Naomi Brooks, server, collapsed during service, possible exhaustion. He set the paper down and looked at his assistant. What do you recommend? Give her a day off. Let her recover. Then put her back on rotation. The assistant shrugged. She's one of our best servers. It would be inconvenient to replace her mid-season. Victor nodded absently. Fine. 1 day. Then back to work. If she can't handle the pace, we'll find someone who can. The assistant left. Victor remained at his desk, staring at the report without seeing it. A memory surfaced uninvited. He was 14 years old, standing in a restaurant kitchen much smaller and shabbier than his own. His mother lay on the floor, her waitress uniform stained with grease, her breath shallow and labored. She had worked a double shift, then a triple. Then her heart simply gave out. Victor closed his eyes and pushed the memory away. That was a different time, a different world. He had built his empire specifically to escape that kind of weakness, to never be vulnerable again. He crumpled the incident report and threw it in the trash. Naomi returned to work 2 days later. Her body had recovered, but something inside her had shifted. The rage she had felt that night in her apartment had hardened into something sharper, something that sat behind her ribs like a splinter. She moved slower now, not from defiance but from necessity. Her muscles ached, her joints protested every step, but she kept moving, kept serving, kept surviving. During a private dinner that week, she brought wine to Victor's table. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured. Victor noticed. "You're falling behind," he said, addressing the comment to his business partner rather than to her. "The service tonight has been sluggish, disappointing." The business partner glanced at Naomi with something that might have been sympathy. "Perhaps your staff is overworked." Victor's expression didn't change. "Overwork is an excuse invented by people who lack discipline. My employees are compensated fairly. If they cannot perform, the failure is theirs, not mine." Naomi set the wine bottle down with careful precision. Every cell in her body wanted to scream. Instead, she said, "Will there be anything else, sir?" Victor finally looked at her directly. His eyes were cold, assessing, utterly devoid of recognition. "Yes. Do better." She retreated to the shadows, her face burning with humiliation. At the edge of the room, near the service entrance, she noticed the young woman from IT, the one who had warned her weeks ago. The woman stood in the corner with a tablet, apparently checking the audiovisual equipment, but her eyes were fixed on Victor's table, and in her hand, barely visible, was a small device that looked nothing like standard IT equipment. The video appeared online 3 days later. Someone had recorded Victor's dismissive treatment of Naomi, the contemptuous words, the cold eyes, the complete dehumanization. The clip was 90 seconds long, Within hours, it had been viewed over 2 million times. The hashtag emerged organically. Chalk Justice for Naomi. By the following morning, it was trending nationwide. News outlets picked up the story. Social media exploded with commentary. Former employees of Hale and Legacy came forward with their own stories of exploitation and abuse. The narrative snowballed into an avalanche. Victor sat in the emergency board meeting, watching his empire crack. Our stock dropped 11% overnight, the CFO reported. 3 major investors are threatening to pull out. Senator Morrison has publicly distanced himself from any association with our restaurants. This is a PR nightmare, the communications director added. We need to get ahead of this. Issue an apology. Promise an internal investigation. Victor's jaw tightened. Find out who leaked that video. Sir, with respect, the source of the leak is secondary to find them. Victor's voice cut through the room like a blade. Someone in my organization betrayed me. I want to know who. The meeting adjourned without resolution. Victor remained in the conference room, alone with the wreckage of his reputation. That night, in his private office, he opened his desk drawer and removed an old photograph. His mother smiled up at him from the faded image, young and beautiful in her waitress uniform. She had been 28 in that photo, the same age as Naomi Brooks. Victor stared at the picture for a long time. His throat felt tight. His hands, for the first time in decades, trembled. The suspension came without warning. Derek called Naomi into his office and handed her a formal letter. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending internal investigation. Naomi's blood ran cold. Investigation? Into what? The video, the media circus, the damage to our brand. Derek's smile was thin and cruel. Someone has to be held accountable. Until we determine the full scope of this situation, you are not permitted on the premises. I didn't leak that video. I didn't even know it existed until your employee badge. Derek held out his hand. Now! Naomi wanted to argue, to fight, to demand justice. But she saw the calculation in Derek's eyes and understood. She wasn't being investigated. She was being sacrificed. She handed over her badge and walked out of Hale and Legacy for what she believed would be the last time. The internet, predictably, turned on itself. Half of social media rallied behind Naomi. Fundraisers were launched, solidarity hashtags multiplied. Strangers sent messages of support from around the world. The other half attacked her. Anonymous accounts accused her of staging the incident for attention. Conspiracy theories painted her as a gold digger, an opportunist, a race baiter exploiting victimhood for personal gain. Her photograph was dissected and mocked. Her character was assassinated by people who had never met her. Naomi sat in her apartment, scrolling through the comments with numb disbelief. Lying for likes. Another angry black woman playing the race card. She probably slept her way into those private dinners. She closed her laptop and stared at the wall. The rage inside her had transformed again, no longer sharp but hollow. An emptiness where hope used to live. Delia found her outside the restaurant 2 days later. Naomi had come to collect her final paycheck, only to be told it would be mailed. I heard what happened, Delia said. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes were troubled. Baby, I'm so sorry. Can you help me? Naomi asked directly. You've seen everything. You know how they treat people. If you testified... Delia's face crumpled. I want to. God knows I want to. Then do it. Please. The older woman shook her head slowly, painfully. I can't. I'm sorry. I have nothing left but this job. If I speak up, they'll destroy me too. Tears welled in her eyes. I'm a coward. I know that. But I'm a coward who can't afford to be brave. Naomi watched Delia walk back into the restaurant. The door closed behind her with a sound like a verdict. The eviction notice arrived on a Tuesday. Naomi had missed 2 months of rent. Even while working, most of her paycheck had gone directly to her mother's medical bills and Marcus's tuition. The numbers never added up, and now the landlord, who had always been understanding before, could no longer afford to wait. She had 72 hours to vacate. She called Marcus from the stairwell of her building, unable to face the apartment that was no longer hers. "Come stay with me," Marcus insisted. "My dorm room is tiny, but we can make it work. You have a roommate, you have classes. I'm not dragging you into this mess." "You're my sister. Your mess is my mess." His voice cracked slightly. "Naomi, let me help. Please, I can drop out, get a full-time job." "Don't you dare!" The words came out fierce, almost angry. "Don't you dare throw away your future because of me. That's not how this works." "Then how does this work?" Marcus demanded. "You sacrifice everything while I sit in a classroom pretending the world isn't falling apart?" "I can't do that anymore. I won't." Naomi leaned against the cold wall, closing her eyes. "Just finish the semester. That's all I'm asking. One more semester. Can you do that for me?" The silence on the other end stretched like a wound. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "I hate being helpless. I hate that loving me is destroying you." "You're not destroying me," Naomi whispered. "You're the reason I'm still standing." The hospital called at 3 in the morning. Ruth's condition had deteriorated rapidly. The cancer was spreading faster than the treatments could contain it. She needed to be moved to intensive care immediately. Naomi arrived at Brooklyn Memorial with yesterday's clothes and a heart full of dread. Her mother lay in the ICU bed, surrounded by machines and tubes, smaller than Naomi had ever seen her. "The oncologist will be in shortly," the nurse said. "He needs to discuss next steps." Next steps. Such a clinical phrase for such a devastating reality. The doctor was kind, but direct. The cancer required a new aggressive treatment protocol, experimental, expensive, not covered by insurance. "How much?" Naomi asked. The doctor named a figure that made her vision blur. More money than she would make in 5 years. More money than she could borrow, beg, or steal. "I understand this is difficult," the doctor said. "There are financial assistance programs we can explore, but time is critical." Naomi nodded, unable to speak. She sat beside her mother's bed for hours after the doctor left, holding Ruth's frail hand, watching her chest rise and fall with each labored breath. This was her mother, the woman who had raised her alone, who had worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, who had taught her that dignity was something no one could take unless you gave it away. But dignity didn't pay medical bills. Dignity didn't stop cancer. Dignity didn't matter when the people you loved were dying. Victor made his decision in the executive boardroom, surrounded by lawyers and PR specialists. "We need a narrative," the crisis consultant explained. "Someone to blame. Someone who isn't you." "The waitress," the lawyer suggested. "Frame it as a disgruntled employee seeking attention. Find witnesses to support claims of poor performance, attitude problems." Victor listened to the strategy unfold. It was elegant in its cruelty. Discredit the victim, protect the brand, move forward as if nothing had happened. "Do it," he said. The team dispersed to execute the plan. Victor remained in his chair, staring at the polished table. He thought of Naomi's face when he had dressed her down in front of his guests. The way she had absorbed the humiliation without flinching. The dignity she had maintained even as he stripped it from her. He thought of his mother, who had possessed that same quiet strength, who had endured years of similar treatment from men who saw her as nothing more than a servant. And he thought of the day she died, alone on a kitchen floor, because no one had valued her enough to notice she was struggling. Victor reached into his pocket and pulled out his mother's photograph. He had carried it with him for 38 years, a reminder of what he had escaped. But looking at it now, he wondered if he had escaped anything at all. "What have I become?" he whispered to the empty room. The photograph offered no answer, but in his chest, beneath the armor he had built over decades, something cracked. Just a hairline fracture, just enough to let a sliver of light through, just enough to begin the slow, painful process of awakening. The young woman from IT was waiting for Victor when he returned to his office the following evening. She sat in the chair across from his desk, uninvited, her laptop open on her knees. "Security should have stopped you," Victor said, his voice flat. "Security doesn't notice people like me." She closed the laptop and met his gaze without flinching. "My name is Maya Collins, and you killed my mother." Victor's hand froze on the door handle. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Linda Collins. She worked in your kitchen for 8 years. 3 years ago, she collapsed after a 16-hour shift. A stroke. No one called an ambulance because they were afraid of causing a scandal." Maya's voice remained steady, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "She died on that floor, Mr. Hale, alone, surrounded by people who valued their jobs more than her life." The name triggered something in Victor's memory. A report he had skimmed, an incident he had dismissed, another replaceable worker who had failed to meet his standards. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said carefully, "but I don't see how—" "I've spent 2 years collecting evidence." Maya set a thick folder on his desk. 47 employees systematically exploited over the past decade. Unpaid overtime, illegal terminations, covered-up workplace injuries, medical claims denied. Naomi Brooks is just the latest victim. Victor stared at the folder without touching it. "If you have evidence of wrongdoing, you should take it to the authorities." "I already have." Maya stood, her slight frame somehow commanding the entire room. 5 news organizations received copies this morning. The Department of Labor opens their investigation next week. She walked toward the door, then stopped. "You can destroy me the way you destroyed my mother. But it won't change anything. The truth is already out there. You can't run from it anymore." She left without another word. Victor remained motionless for a long time, staring at the folder that contained the documented evidence of everything he had built and everything he had broken. That night, Victor read every page. The names blurred together after a while. Maria Santos, terminated after requesting maternity leave. James Wright, fired for reporting a kitchen fire violation. Sandra Mitchell, denied workers' compensation after burning her hand on a faulty stove. And Linda Collins. Page 43. A photograph showed her smiling beside a young girl who could only be Maya. The resemblance was unmistakable. Victor studied Linda's face, the tired eyes, the determined set of her jaw, the smile that seemed to cost her everything to maintain. He had seen that same expression countless times, on his servers, on his kitchen staff, on his mother. He pulled out his mother's photograph and held it beside Linda's. 2 women separated by decades, but united by the same quiet suffering, the same invisible labor, the same disposable humanity. Victor's hands began to shake, his throat constricted. For the first time since he was 14 years old, tears spilled down his cheeks. "I became the monster," he whispered to the empty office. "I became exactly what killed you." Naomi was staying in a friend's apartment in Queens, a cramped studio with a leaking faucet and a view of a brick wall. It was nearly midnight when her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. "Ms. Brooks, this is the front desk. There's a man here to see you. He says his name is Victor Hale." Naomi nearly dropped the phone. "Tell him to leave." "He says he's not leaving until you speak with him. He says—" The receptionist's voice grew muffled, as if she were covering the receiver. "He says he's not here to ask for forgiveness." Naomi sat in silence, her heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to protect herself, to never let this man into her space again. But something in the message gave her pause. Not here to ask for forgiveness. What did that even mean? Send him up, she heard herself say. Victor stood in her doorway, looking nothing like the man she remembered. His suit was rumpled, his silver hair was disheveled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his hands hung at his sides with none of their usual commanding certainty. "May I come in?" His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Naomi stepped aside without speaking. Victor entered the small apartment, taking in the water stains on the ceiling, the second-hand furniture, the medical bills still piled on the counter. His expression revealed nothing, but something in his posture shifted, a subtle slackening, as if the weight of what he was seeing had physically settled on his shoulders. "I didn't come here to apologize," he said. "An apology would be an insult. What I did to you, what my company did to dozens of people, can't be undone with words." Naomi folded her arms across her chest. "Then why are you here?" Victor moved to the window, staring out at the brick wall. "My mother was a waitress. She worked at a diner in Newark, double and triple shifts, 7 days a week. I was 14 when she collapsed in the kitchen. Her heart gave out. No one called for help because they didn't want to deal with the paperwork." He turned to face Naomi. "I built my entire empire on the promise that I would never be that powerless again, that I would never be the one on the floor. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing the people who were falling. I became the thing that killed her." Naomi listened, her expression unreadable. "You reminded me of her," Victor continued. "The way you carried yourself, the dignity you maintained even when I tried to strip it from you. I saw my mother in you, and instead of protecting you, I punished you for it." His voice cracked slightly. "I couldn't save her, so I convinced myself that people who needed saving were weak, that they deserved what happened to them. Because if they didn't deserve it, then neither did she. And if she didn't deserve it, then you had to face what was done to her," Naomi finished quietly. Victor nodded, unable to speak. The apartment fell silent. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. Someone in the hallway laughed at a joke neither of them could hear. "What do you want from me?" Naomi asked finally. "Absolution? I don't have any to give." "I know." Victor reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope. "Tomorrow morning, I'm holding a press conference. I'm going to publicly acknowledge everything, the exploitation, the cover-ups, all of it. I'm going to face whatever legal consequences come, and I'm establishing a fund to compensate every employee who was harmed by my company's practices." He set the envelope on the counter. "This is yours, enough to cover your mother's treatments, your brother's education, and whatever else you need to start over." Naomi didn't touch the envelope. "You think money fixes this?" "No, nothing fixes this, but it's the only thing I have that might help." Victor moved toward the door. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to forget. I'm only asking you to believe that I finally understand what I did, and that I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to become someone my mother wouldn't be ashamed of." He opened the door, then turned back one final time. "For what it's worth, Ms. Brooks, you're stronger than anyone I've ever met, including me." Then he was gone. The press conference dominated the news cycle for weeks. Victor Hale stood before a wall of cameras and microphones and systematically dismantled his own reputation. He admitted to the systemic exploitation. He named names. He accepted responsibility without deflection or excuse. The fallout was immediate and severe. Stock prices plummeted. Investors fled. Lawsuits multiplied. The Hale and Legacy empire, once a monument to success, began its slow and public collapse. Victor faced it all without flinching. When reporters demanded explanations, he gave them. When lawyers warned him of criminal exposure, he accepted the risk. When former colleagues called him a fool, he didn't argue. For the first time in his life, he had nothing to hide behind. And in that nakedness, he discovered something unexpected: relief. 6 months later, A small restaurant opened in Brooklyn. The sign above the door read Ruth's Kitchen in hand-painted letters. Below it, a smaller plaque displayed a simple message: dignity is not earned, it is born. Naomi stood behind the counter, directing her small staff with calm authority. The menu was simple: comfort food at fair prices, served by employees who worked reasonable hours for living wages. It would never make her rich, but it was hers. Ruth Brooks sat in the corner booth, thinner than before but alive. The experimental treatment had worked. The cancer was in remission. She spent most days watching her daughter work, a smile on her face that no amount of suffering had managed to extinguish. Marcus came by on weekends, bussing tables between law school classes. He still argued that he should contribute more, and Naomi still refused to let him sacrifice his future. Some battles, she had learned, were worth fighting forever. Delia had quit Hale and Legacy the day after Victor's press conference. She now ran Ruth's Kitchen's kitchen with the same fierce energy she had once devoted to surviving. But there was a lightness to her now, a freedom that 12 years of fear had never allowed. "Table 4 needs more cornbread," Delia called from the back. "On it," Naomi replied, already reaching for the basket. Maya Collins visited her mother's grave on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. She laid flowers on the headstone and knelt in the grass, her fingers tracing the carved letters of Linda's name. "I did it, Mom," she whispered. "I made them see. I made them pay." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she smiled through them. "I hope you're proud. I hope wherever you are, you finally have peace." She stayed until the sun began to set, then walked away without looking back. There would be other battles to fight, other wrongs to right, but this one was finished. Victor Hale walked through Brooklyn on a Thursday evening, his coat collar turned up against the autumn chill. His empire had shrunk to a fraction of its former size. His name no longer commanded respect or fear. Most days he worked anonymously at a community center, helping immigrant workers navigate employment rights, the kind of work that earned nothing and meant everything. He stopped outside a small restaurant with a hand-painted sign. Through the window, he could see Naomi Brooks laughing with a customer, her face transformed by a joy he had never witnessed during her time at Hale and Legacy. She looked up and saw him through the glass. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. No words, no gestures. Just two people acknowledging a shared history that could never be erased, but might, in time, be transcended. Then Victor nodded once, a small movement, barely perceptible, and continued walking down the street. Naomi watched him go. She did not wave. She did not call out. But something in her chest loosened, just slightly. Not forgiveness, not absolution. Something quieter. Something like release. She turned back to her restaurant, her mother, her brother, her life. The past could not be undone, but the future was still unwritten. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Naomi Brooks was free to write it herself.